Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. Thank you so much for clicking on this video today. Today is my final update for my 2023 Pan Those Palette series. So this is my last official update for the year before my finale, which is coming in the early part of January of the new year. I've been working on two separate palettes this year, each of them with separate goals. First, I've been working on my Tarteist Pro To Go palette, trying to use this one up entirely. And I also have my Lorac Mega Pro2 palette that I want to hit pan on every single shade in here. So if you haven't been following along and you want a little binge for yourself at this moment, go ahead and check out the playlist for this video. I will link it right up here in the cards and you can see all of my months of progress up until this point. And for those of you who've been following along on my journey, thank you so much. This has been such a fun and successful year of panning, and I appreciate each and every one of you for being a part of it. So I'm gonna go through each of these palettes one at a time, let you know what they look like at the beginning of the year, what they looked like last month, and then what they look like today. I always have different goals that I'm focusing on for each of these palettes, so I'll let you know if I met those goals or not. And I'll also update you on the amount of product I was able to use by telling you the weight of these palettes. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please stay tuned for this video. And before we get into it, go ahead and give this video a quick thumbs up. Leave a comment at any moment. I love to hear from you. And if you're new here, or maybe you've been around for a while and haven't yet done so, please consider subscribing to my channel. I am so close to reaching 4,000 subscribers, and I would love to get there before the new year, and you could help me do it. So thank you in advance. Let's get right on into the video. So I always start with my Tarteist Pro To Go palette. This little mini palette started with 6 shades in here, and it's just been a great palette to focus on for the year. I found that I really like panning smaller palettes. It just feels a lot more easy to make progress, and I'm also able to incorporate a lot of other shades from other palettes while I'm panning something like this. This palette's been great quality. I really enjoyed using it, but I'll be ready to say goodbye to it at the end of the year. We have spent a lot of time together. So here's what the palette was looking like when I first brought it into the project in January. I had pan on Boss. This palette had gotten quite a bit of use on other shades as well, so I had a nice little head start before panning this palette for the year. Here's what the palette was looking like last month, and you can see that we were left with just 2 shades in this palette, the 2 shimmer shades, and my goal for those was to use them 10 times each and just try and expand that pan as much as I can before this update. And here's what the palette is looking like today. So hopefully you'll see a little bit of expansion in those 2 shimmer shades. I will go through those one at a time and let you know how much I was able to use them, show you videos of what they look like last month compared to this month up close, and let you know the weight difference on this palette. So I'll just go through the shades that are empty real quick and let you know how many uses it took me to empty those shades. So starting off with Drive, which was like a nice, like darker cream tone shade, like almost like a dark beige. That was the first shade that I was able to finish, and I used it 180 times to empty it. Next is Stylin', which is that deep dark brown shade that was in there, and I mostly used this shade in my brows over the course of the year. I used it 289 times, and that one is also now an empty. And I did end up making it into a bronzer to get the final product used once it was crumbling out of that pan. Which brings us to the first shade I have to update you on, this metallic bronzy shade right here, Boss. So here's what Boss was looking like last month. This was after 73 uses in the project. My goal is to reach for it 10 times this month. I was only able to reach for it 7, making for 80 uses total. And here's what Boss is looking like today. And I'm pretty confident I'll have a nice little expansion in that pan. We're getting very, very close to the edge of the pan there. And, you know, do you think I could do a final push to finish this product up? I probably could if I wanted to. I'm not necessarily gonna make myself do that, but we'll see. I am gonna just set my goal to be a little bit higher for this shade for the next update. So maybe I'm able to get more than 7 uses, get closer to that goal, and hopefully have a nice finale on this shade for the next update and just feel nice and accomplished for that one. I know I could use these shimmers as nail polish, but I've tried that a few times and it's just really not for me. I don't want to use my eyeshadows as nail polish. I'm gonna continue to just use these as eyeshadows and see what progress I can make in the conventional old-fashioned way. The next shade was Hype, which was like a shimmery gold shade. I emptied that shade after 161 uses in this project. And now that I think about it, I think that might have been the first shade that I finished because I was using it as an eyeshadow as well as a face highlight. And I went through it quite quickly that way. And the next shade was Crisp, which was like a medium toned brown shade. And this was a great crease color throughout the year. I loved using it. And then I also mixed it in with Stylin' to use as a bronzer throughout the year. I was able to finish Crisp in 162 uses. And that brings me to the last shade, my challenge shade of the year, as you know, Dominate, which is like this really pretty like cranberry metallic shade. I actually have this all over my lid today, topped with kind of an iridescent shade from a different palette. If you care to know, it's the shade Trust Issues from the Jackie Aina ABH palette. And I really like like how this look turned out. It's kind of a new, different combination for me, and I love thinking of creative ways to use my panning eyeshadows. It's fun to just try them in different combinations, and this one turned out okay. I'm not hating it. And it was a very easy look to wear to work, so I appreciate it for that. So here's what Dominate was looking like last month. This was after 54 uses in this project. My goal was to use it 10 times this month. I was only able to reach for it 6 times, so that makes 60 uses total, and here's what Dominate is looking like today. And I'm hoping that there'll be a little bit of an expansion, not as dramatic as Boss, but still hopefully a difference that you can easily see. I have no hope to finish Dominate by the next update. I'm not going to attempt to, but again, I'm going to set myself a nice high goal on it and really do my best to expand that pan as much as possible before we do the finale for this video and I move on from this palette. I'm ready. The weight difference on this palette has been fun to track, but also kind of variable. My scale is not the most accurate, but I've been doing my best to get a weight measurement for you every month, and it has been fun to see the number gradually go down over the course of this year. So when I first brought this palette into the project in January, it was weighing 62.64 grams. Last month, it was weighing 55.77 grams. And this month, I weighed it in at 55.71 grams. So I only used 0.06 grams of product. And I guess that kind of makes sense, especially since I'm only using the shimmer shades at this point. But hopefully I'll have a little bit of a bigger jump for you by the next update, because that's just such a small, insignificant number. And we don't like those kind of numbers around here. I like big numbers. My ultimate goal for this palette was to finish it up by the end of the year. I'm gonna get pretty darn close. I don't think I'm gonna finish it up entirely, but to try and just get that final push on it, I'm gonna set a 15 use goal for Boss, and I think I should be able to do that if I reach for it every other day, which should be pretty easy to do. This is a very neutral everyday shade for me, and I really enjoy wearing it, and I'm gonna do my darndest to use it 15 times and hopefully have maybe a side pan for you by the finale. And for Dominate, I'm gonna try and use that one 10 times, which is the same goal that I had this last month, but this time I'm gonna try and hit that goal. Okay, so in that aspect, it's a bigger goal, at least in my mind, which doesn't always make sense to everyone, but it makes sense to me. So that is all for my Tarteist Pro To Go for now. We will see where we get in the finale, but before we move on to the next one, please enjoy this lovely montage of all of the months of progress from this palette since we started it in January. Now for the Lorac Mega Pro 2. Oh my goodness, this palette, I looked it up. I have had this palette since 2015 because I got it the year that it was released, and I got it for Christmas. It was a gift from my sister, and they released it right around the holiday season, and it has been a solid 8 years with this palette. And I'm so glad I brought it into this project this year because it really did just need a little bit of extra love and attention before I ultimately say goodbye, because I think that's what's going to happen, friends. I know so many of my followers have requested that I continue painting this palette, but if it's 8 years old and I've gotten the use on it in those 8 years and I have other things in my collection that are just sitting around getting old, there's no reason for me to keep this around much longer, even though it's satisfying to see the pans expand and to see empty pans and all that fun stuff. It's just not really a priority for me, at least at this point in my life. I really want to get use on other things in my collection and really love on those and say goodbye to older friends. All that to say, I've loved painting this palette this year. So here's what this palette was looking like when I first brought it into the project in January. My goal was to hit pan in every single eyeshadow shade in this palette. I think I had 7 pans to begin with, so that means I had 28 pans to hit during the course of this year. here's what the palette was looking like last month. I had just one eyeshadow remaining that I was trying to hit pan on. It was that like steel gray, blue, shimmer shade, gunmetal in the third row. And here's what the palette is looking like this month. And I'm happy to report I've done it. I've hit pan on every single one of these shades, which is just so satisfying to see and so satisfying to say. And I also was able to finish a shade. I finished Porcelain during the course of this project, and I'm very, very close to finishing Bisque. And once I finish up Bisque, I'm gonna try and do my darndest to expand Custard as much as I can, and maybe Tawny as well, just to really push myself just a little bit more before the year is up. So here's Gunmetal up close. I did have a nice little divot on it last month, and I was hoping that it would just take me a couple more uses to hit pan on it. It only took me one more use. I was able to hit a big juicy pan in that final use, and here is that pan for you up close today. Isn't it a lovely thing to see? Gunmetal's a really fun shade. There's not a lot of shades like this in my collection, and I enjoyed playing with it and experimenting with it. So even though I've hit my goal of hitting pan on every single shade, I'm gonna continue to work on this just a couple more weeks until the new year, and then I believe it will be time to say goodbye. She definitely had her moment. She got a lot of love, and it's going to be a little sad, but also it'll make me happy that I will be able to focus on other things in my collection and get good use on those. But before that happens, in these next few weeks, I'm going to try and expand pan on Custard as much as I can. I'm going to reach for Tawny and just see what I can do with it, since it is quite small and low in that pan. And I just will play with anything else that I feel like in the moment. I might reach for some of these light toned shimmer shades as inner corner highlights. I might play with Gunmetal a little bit more just for like a final hurrah. And we'll just see what I can do with it in these last few weeks. As far as weight goes on this palette, it's been very hard to track. I have quite a small scale, and I'm not able to fit this thing very nicely on the scale, so my weight measurements have been a little bit all over the place this year, but that's okay. We are still seeing a downward trend, and it's always fun to talk numbers. At the beginning of the year, this palette was weighing 264.7 grams. Last month, it was weighing 261.58 grams, and this month it weighed in at 262 grams. So somehow we gained weight. Again, these measurements are quite faulty, but of course I'll take the weight for you one last time in the finale, and hopefully I'll have a negative number by next time. Still actually performing quite well. It's been really good quality. I'm glad I had it in my collection. This was one of the first, if not the first, high-end eyeshadow palettes that I ever owned, like right when I really first started getting into eyeshadow. I've always loved makeup, but I rarely, if ever, wore eyeshadow before I got into YouTube in 2014. And this was a really fun little starter palette, really easy to use, blendable, really wearable shades, and I had a lot of fun with her. And I would consider buying another Lorac palette someday. There was some on sale at Ulta recently, and I was tempted. But I resisted, and I'm proud of myself. So thank you for being proud of me as well. I know you are. And here is that montage for you of all of the months of progress for my Lorac Mega Pro 2. Please enjoy. That's all from my Pan Those Palettes update for this month, my last update for the year before my finale. I am so excited to see what I can do on these palettes before the year is up, and I'm also ready to say goodbye and move on with my life. I'm not sure if I'm going to do a Pan That palette next year. This has been really fun to track, but I'm just looking through my collection, and I just don't know if there's something that I really want to pan for the next year. There's a couple that I've thought about panning, but I just don't know if I'm ready to commit. I'm going to think about it a little bit more. Maybe you can encourage me if you really want me to do a Pan That palette. Let me know in the comments. If you're kind of feeling more, that's okay. Do other things, pan other things, track other things. Let me know that in the comments as well. I'm sure I'll get a mixture of both. It's not going to help me at all. But sometimes I need a little push in one direction or the other. Thank you so much for being here and watching this video. I really appreciate you coming along on my panning journey. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up before you leave. I hope you're doing really well wherever you are in the world, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. Until then, bye. I got him. Hi. Oh, look how big he's getting. Hi, baby. This Beetlejuice. Hi, Fluffer Butt. Bye.